You're listening to the Justice Hour on 12:30 a.m. WBZT. I'm your host, Lisa Macy, and Miami's rocking with tonight's guest, Stanley Tate, who is the former chair of the Resolution Trust Corporation, amongst many other things that he has credited to his history, and we're going to talk about some of those other things. The next thing, well, before we move on to, I'm going to talk about the Florida prepaid college tuition program, the Stanley G. Tate College prepaid program. I want to talk about, with all of your experience in real estate developing, banking, mortgages, what do you think the keys are to turn the market around? I mean, Florida is suffering, and there's predictions that it's going to be suffering from a while because of all this disaster with the foreclosures and the bad mortgages. If you were asked by someone in office, what do we need to do? What do they need to do? Do they need to pass a law, or what can they do for the governor and the legislature, or even at the federal level, to turn this economy around?
Well, first of all, there are a lot of things that can be done. Lisa, there's just a lot of things, most of which have to be done at the federal level. I could tell you one of the disappointments of this administration was that their theory of bringing about a curative measure to the problems in a lot of industries, real estate being one of them, was money. Money is not enough unless it's distributed in the right place. Having the money and giving it to firms like General Motors may work for General Motors. But the proof of the pudding is that America was built on the small entrepreneur, not on a General Motors. Most businesses in America become successful because they're mama and papa operations. They own one or two or three different entities in which they're all related to the same type of business. The problem is the banks have more capital than they know what to do with, but because money is so inexpensive, the government, in my opinion, and the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank, Mr. Bernanke, I think, made a terrible mistake. And he has convinced the president that inexpensive money is the cure. It isn't the cure, and it hasn't cured it, and it won't cure it. It won't cure it because inexpensive money means that the banks have the opportunity to put their money in more riskier things, and that's what they're doing. And because they're yielding much higher rates of return than the local guy can afford to pay, they're not lending to the small guy who wants to open a store. They're not lending it to a pharmacist who says, I want to open my own drugstore. They're not lending it to a guy who says, I want to start a small manufacturing plant with three people working for me. And the reason for that is they don't have a regulation that forces the bank to do it. I've met with the president. I could tell you, there's no question that he is totally lacking in understanding the needs of business. This is a man, including Mr. Bernanke, the comptroller, the man who runs the Federal Reserve Bank. He doesn't know what a Friday night payroll is. He doesn't run. He's never run a business. The president has never run a business. They're book economists. Well, what we're going through now, the solution is not in the book.
What would you do?
Well, I'd force banks to make a percentage of their total assets into local loans, smaller loans, even higher riskier loans. And I would develop a program on the federal government where a certain percentage of them, after they were monitored, would be guaranteed by the federal government. I'd rather see the government give money to the banks that make an attempt to bring business back into the fold, to hire employees, get them going, and guarantee some of those debt. Than what they're doing, because they're not guaranteeing the debt when they're lending it to General Motors or when they're not.
Right, these bailouts are certainly not the answer.
That's right. That's right. But the banks, under the rules of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, there's a lot of things they could do if the federal government would give them the authority to do it. The biggest problem we have is the federal government today is made up of bureaucrats. They're not made up of people who understand what business is all about. There's a big difference. A bureaucrat, you know, one of the reasons the RTC was successful, it was not a bureaucratic agency. We didn't have bureaucrats. We didn't have government employees. I told you a small story. I fired all our attorneys one Friday afternoon. Why? They didn't want to call. They called me their client. I said, I'm not your client. I'm your boss. I sign your check. You do it my way or you're out. Well, they said, no, we're going to do it our way. And I fired them all. They all came back to work on Monday because they learned to do it my way. My way was my way. And that's why the RTC was so successful. One of the reasons. And also...
You never held office, did you?
Yes, actually, I was a mayor of a small municipality for 20 years. No one ever would run against me. I announced...
Where was that?
Bay Harbor Islands. It's a small municipality. It's probably got 6,000 or 7,000 people living in it.
Is that in Miami-Dade County?
Miami-Dade County. But you got to realize, when I grew up in Miami, there were only 4 municipalities. There are 40 today. There was Hialeah, there was Coral Gables, there was Miami Beach, and Miami.
Wow.
That was it. That made up Miami. We had 37,000 people in those days. This was in the 30s when I was a small kid growing up. Today, you have 2.5 million people. It's a big, big operation. We have unbelievable duplication of services. We have so many municipalities, if you go in, have their own code requirements. I mean...
Other than mayor, you never wanted to run for anything else?
No, you know what? I decided I could do more as an effective citizen than as a politician. Politicians become embraced with themselves. They really feel they're more important than they are. And they spend too much of their time trying to be elected, and that's a big problem. Congress, for instance, a congressman or a woman, every 2 years they got to run for re-election.
Right.
And, you know, it's not fun. I've run a lot of campaigns, as you know, Lisa. I ran Ileana's campaign. I was one of the managers of Marco Rubio's campaign, and I've been involved in politics all my life. It's so expensive. It's beyond anyone's comprehension. A Senate seat in the state of Florida is going to cost maybe as much as $7-8 million. I mean, you realize, you know, it's a Senate seat.
It's an incredible sum of money.
Right,
think about
incredible. Listen, it's no secret. President Obama has already announced he's going to raise $1 billion. $1 billion is 1,000 million. 1,000 million for a presidential campaign is unheard of, just unheard of. And where's he getting it? 500 million is going to come from the banks. Why shouldn't they give him money? He's giving them everything that they want. They have the opportunity to run their own show, and they're not subject to the regulations that they should be, to get the money in the hands of the people who need the money, to create jobs. The cure is there. It's just that, unfortunately, when bureaucrats run the government, they just don't understand what they need to do, because the government is a business. And if you don't run it like a business, it's not going to run.
Right.
And that's the problem. Our government is not run like a business.
Well, let's talk about the Stanley G. Tate Florida Prepaid College Program. I went on the website, and there's this beautiful picture of you and a bunch of young children. And that was the Florida Prepaid College Program was created by the legislature in '87 through.
I wrote it.
You wrote the Florida College Prepaid Program.
Governor Graham was the governor, and he was a good friend. He is a good friend of mine. He's teaching at the University of Florida now. But he asked me to write a program that would be more indicative of what education was all about, to give people a greater opportunity to have an education so that they can do better than their mothers and fathers. That was the principle behind the program.
And it's a beautiful program that so many children who would not have been able to go to college.
It's the largest program in the United States. We have
Florida?
1,400,000 kids in the program, of which none of them have yet gone to college. We have 350,000 who have already graduated college. It's a great program. What has happened with that program is it's become so expensive because the cost of an education, which is not part of the program, that's independent of the program, has gone up so high, and there's reasons for that, and you and I talked about it a little bit driving here, and I'll go into that if you'd like.
You were the chairman from '87 to 2005.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, a lot of people had concerns. I got an email from Dee Vandermeer, and she had emailed me the question that she knew someone who took advantage of that type of investing for college, and they said that the option was very helpful. However, it's amazing to see how college tuition has skyrocketed with no end in sight, and how the students are facing such a grim workforce upon graduation.
That's true. Lisa, let me tell you, in 1988, when we started the program, for 4 years of college, the cost for a newborn child was $3,200 for 4 years of college. $3,200, okay? That cost this year will be $52,000.
How does it go from $3,000 in 1987? Is that 23 years?
88.
1988, 22 years.
Right.
to
Simple.
$52,000.
It's a very simple, and I can give it to you. And every legislator in Florida knows it because I've been up every single session for the legislature as these expenses went. And it's because we have 11 universities that are in the university system. They are owned by the university. They're owned by the state of Florida. Each one of those universities are research and development universities. We have more R&D colleges in Florida than any state in the United States. To have an R&D program, that means you need medical schools, you need law schools, you need engineering schools, you need everything. A medical school costs over $1 million to just open the doors. One of your daughters goes to FIU. They're going to have a medical school. They applied for
FAU, right.
FAU, I'm sorry. But the truth of the matter, we already have 5 medical schools in Florida. The Medical Association said at most Florida would be 4. We already have 5. We have applications in for 2 more, which will be 7. And I only heard yesterday 3 more of the remaining 4 are going to apply for medical schools too, because each one wants to have a medical school. It's just impossible. We can't afford 11 research and development universities in the state of Florida. We have to have universities that concentrate more on education than on the kind of things that are professional. It's nice to be able to go to law school, but you know, as I do, that there are more graduates of law schools today that can't even get a job.
Right.
And we're producing more than there's a need, even in the medical profession. When the AMA, which is the American Medical Association, came in and did a study on the state of Florida, they said at the most we need would be 4 medical schools. That would produce enough doctors if they went to the areas where the doctors were needed. One big problem. Doctors don't want to go where they're needed. They want to go where they can make the most money.
Right.
That's not meant to be a nasty comment about the medical profession. It really doesn't mean. But the truth is, they don't answer house calls anymore. They don't get up in the middle of the night to visit you when you're sick with a cold or a really bad sick. They say, go to the hospital, go to the emergency room. I'm on the board of a very big independent hospital. We have...
and that's one of the problems now in the emergency room, that people are coming in with a cold to the emergency room that backs up everything when you get a serious injury. Because we all want a better educated workforce in the state of Florida. We want a better educated society. But when I graduated, I mean, I've never heard of things, and this was, I graduated from law school in 1988, I believe, and now these kids are coming out of law school with $150,000 in student loans. I had maybe 15 or 20, and I thought that was a lot. And to come out with a student loan the size of a mortgage of a good-sized home, I mean, that's just
I'm on the board of a university here. There isn't a single student who graduates from our school who doesn't have debt. The average debt of a law school, we have a law school, the average debt of one of our law school students who's graduating with a law degree, giving them the right to practice once they pass the bar, is over $40,000 average debt. Well, I don't have to tell you what a terrible deterrent that is for them to be able to even begin to practice. And then there are no jobs because there are more attorneys than there are positions available.
They could go work at the public defender's office and make, what is it, $35,000 they're paying starting attorneys?
That's right. Actually, we have a fund. I have put up a fund for people who will dedicate their profession as an attorney to the public interest.
That's one of the problems that I have with the bar, the bar associations and the Florida Bar. They want to give all these free things like free cocktail parties, free dinners to the judges. They're making $150,000 plus benefits. What about all these people that are out there, sole practitioners, public defenders, making $35,000? Give them the free dinners.
Well, don't you understand?